Now I'm going to reconvene the budget meeting. We don't need a roll call, right?
Yes, we do.
And we're going to start with a roll call for that as well.
Do you have one? Adams? Here. Bailey?
Here.
Bordelon?
Here.
Casper?
Here.
Chase?
Here.
DeSiller Fleming?
Here.
Frickman?
Here.
Gustafson?
Here.
Hanscom?
Here.
Kotowski?
Here.
Lambert? Marley? Marshall? Martin?
Here.
Massett?
Here.
McDermott?
Here.
Melendez?
Here.
Mello Miller?
Here.
Merritt?
Here.
Monahan?
Here.
Newsom?
Here.
Oliver? Pasqualini?
Here.
Perry?
Here.
Powers Sean?
Here.
Pacino? Quinn?
Here.
Richards?
Here.
Rogers?
Here.
Stanford?
Here.
Starkley?
Here.
Stevenson?
Here.
I. Streeter?
Here.
J. Streeter?
Here.
Strode?
Here.
Washington?
Here.
Wells?
Here.
Whitehouse?
Here.
Whitney?
Here.
Eben?
Here.
And Kay Powers.
Here.
That would be our 30.
All right. So our agenda tonight includes the education budget. Representative Whitney, would you come up and please read us your minutes? And we can pause as we've done for the others, so just read us the account 1080 and then we can pause for comments and take our vote and then go forward with the CIPs after we've done the...
I missed that.
All right. These are the RTM education meeting minutes from April 25th, 2019. It was at 6:30 in the Groton Senior Center, Classroom B. In attendance were RTM Education Committee members Mike Whitney, Robert Bailey, Portia Bordelon, Jennifer DeCilia Fleming, Jim Gustafson, and Annie Rogers. RTM Education Committee members absent, Tom Frickman and Carolyn Quinn. Additional RTM members, Simba Eben and Kathy Chase. Board of Education, Kim Watson, Andrea Ackerman, Katrina Fitzgerald, Jane Giolini, Gretchen Newsom, and Lee White. And from Groton Public Schools, Michael Grenier, Superintendent, Susan Austin, Assistant Superintendent, and Ken Knight, Business Manager. At 6:32, the meeting was called to order, and at the same time, we also had roll call with 6 of 8 committee members present. There was quorum throughout the meeting. 6:36, unfinished business. There was no unfinished business. And then the first item on new business, 6:36, was the FYE 2020 budget account 1080 education. And the motion by Representative Gustafson to recommend $77,438,090 for account 1080 education was seconded by Representative Rogers and discussed. There were 2 other motions. Well, actually, let me make sure on that. That was one other motion. Amended, moved by Representative Bordelon to recommend $76,957,100,000 seconded by Representative Bailey. That was discussed. It failed 2-4. Voting in favor were Representative Bordelon and Bailey. Voting against were Representatives DeCilia Fleming, Gustafson, Rogers, and Whitney. The original motion to recommend $77,438,090 was discussed and passed 4-2. Voting in favor were Representative DeCilia Fleming, Gustafson, Rogers, and Whitney. Voting against were Representatives Bordelon and Bailey. Superintendent Grenier presented a budget orientation by going through the education budget book. He described the main changes from the prior year. He also noted that the federal impact aid received this year was substantially greater than anticipated. Everyone present engaged in an extended budget discussion. Issues raised included site budgets, the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program, better remedial support, particularly at schools with lower performance on standardized tests, possible ways to cut costs, implications of school consolidation on staffing, future budgets, and the minimum budget requirement. And that's the end of this part. So I'd like to move the number that was approved by committee, $77,438,000.
Did you describe your vote?
Oh, I did already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
77, it passed 4-2 fair.
Okay, sorry.
And so the recommendation from the committee is for $77,438,090 for account 1080 education.
Is there a second? Second. Or I think it was Representative Frickman. We have a motion on the floor for account 1080, education, made by Representative Whitney for $77,438,090, and it's been seconded by Representative Frickman. Is there any discussion? Representative Adams?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to move another number, please. $76,485,922.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion for $76,485,922 made by Representative Adams and seconded by Representative Bailey. Representative Adams, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just the fact that it's last year's MBR number.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion on the table? Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, when I was sitting in your budget discussions, you had a couple of classes for Spanish-speaking students, native Spanish speakers, but they were classes in Spanish to improve their Spanish. Could you speak to those, please? Because I'm trying to understand why we're, what the point is of allowing Spanish-speaking students to take additional Spanish classes.
Right. Well, we provide, hopefully this is on, the board approved Spanish for native speakers a couple of years ago now for the reason to help the students improve their literacy skills. Not all students who are fluent orally in Spanish actually have the literacy skills in that. So we, instead of having them just kind of take a gut course of Spanish, we provided a literacy course for them, which is appropriate to their language, but not necessarily appropriate to their literacy skills. So we want to make sure when students are bilingual, they're actually bilingual both orally and in reading.
You can
So what is the, I guess I don't understand the point of making them better with Spanish as opposed to,
Right.
better, and my understanding, see, we all took foreign language classes, right? And we all hated it. And you know, a couple of years of French doesn't make you a French speaker, but the point was to let people experience other cultures and something outside of
Right.
their native culture.
Right.
And that's why we all have to take, you know, language courses. So I don't think that's helping any.
Well, these students are also taking English, of course, because they're fluent in English. These are not, these students do not take English as a second language. But I would argue that literature for native Spanish speakers is akin to English for English speakers, and we actually offer 4 years of English. It's required because we want the children to improve their literacy skills, even though they're obviously fluent in English. So essentially it's the same argument. We want to improve their literacy skills.
Thank you. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess in reference to that last comment in regards to the Spanish-speaking native class, it's highly important for children and students in this district. Obviously, I feel there's not enough support for those students as a second language, so I find it extremely important that they have the chance to express themselves in their native tongue and be able to elaborate, and sometimes the teacher can critique their grammatical errors and when it translates into English. I wouldn't look at that as a concern.
Representative Nello Miller?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Kinnear, this number that we have on the floor, the 76 million, that's about $1 million difference. What would that do to the school if we were to vote on that number, if we were to pass that number of minus $1 million? Can you give us an idea of what would be cut?
Sure. The reason I know is because we cut a similar number last year. The budget includes about a $450,000 of the $952,000, if I'm not mistaken, increase that you're referring to. If we cut that, the first half of it would certainly come from site budgets. So if you look at everyone has their budget book. If you look at page, I think it is 2-1. If you look at 2-1 for the proposed budget, you'll see the seventh line down says supplies, and it's a 22% increase in supplies. The increase actually both supplies for schools, site budgets, and supplies for custodial and maintenance work is an increase of $617,000, which is two-thirds of the increase that we're talking about. It's a 22% increase because last year the board cut 25% of the site budgets across the board. So if you turn to page 2-7, it's the one that kind of folds out. You'll see the site budgets, and this year's site budget is 25% less than FY18 site budget. So the first answer to your question, I think the recommendation would be not to cut staff, for example, but we would probably have to cut the site budgets. I've already spoken to the principals about that and essentially warned them that that could happen. And I said, what would happen? What would be cut if we had to cut 25% of your site budgets? And the first two things they said were books and field trips. And we certainly don't want that to happen. The other things that the board might cut could possibly be some professional development that we were hoping to achieve to keep our international baccalaureate teachers up to speed. I don't want to speculate because if it's cut, the board would have to go back. Of course, that would be a fourth year in a row that we have a zero. And I think most of you can imagine running an organization on a 0% budget year after year after year. And the other thing I'll point out is if you would please turn to page 1-5. I talked a little bit about the history, but there's a really interesting chart on page 1-5 that Mr. Knight worked up for us. And it is how far is Groton away from the average expenditure of Connecticut, not the highest expenditures, just the average. In FY18, which is now 2 years ago, we were $780 per child off average. If you multiply that by 4,700 children, you come out with the number of 3.6 million. So Groton schools are underfunded if compared just to average, not to the
Is this average of Connecticut schools?
average of Connecticut schools. That's right. So, so for me, to have a fourth year of zero would be, well, we wouldn't be able to sustain the programs that we have, to put it bluntly. Not after 3 straight years of zero. So a fourth year would be destabilizing to the system.
So let's go back to the supplies, and you're saying that 22% come from supplies, and that would be the first part that you would have to cut. And you would say it would go to the sites. So would we be asking the parents and the teachers then to take on more of that burden? Because I know that for all of us that have kids in school, we already have a supply list of donations for our teachers, but so you're asking that more of that would fall on the parents and the teachers, correct?
Well, not only would I be reluctant to do that, but you're essentially right, but it would be inequitable, because we have some communities, some parts of our community where paying perhaps $100 for a field trip or something would be acceptable, and we have other elements of our community where that would not be. So I think the board would be really hard-pressed to bring in equity to this formula.
So it would make the schools more inequitable across the board. So in other words, Northeast Academy might not be the same as Butler, might not be the same as Mary Morrison, correct?
They would be equitably funded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But at a lower level.
At a lower level. And then you also mentioned textbooks. So how often are textbooks updated? How often are the children getting more textbooks?
Well, they're on a cycle, and frankly, many of them now are online, so it's not the sort of the traditional textbook. But Ms. Austin runs a series of committees where we update and revise the curriculum on a cyclic basis, a 5 or 6 year basis, and so materials are provided during those revisions.
And then, I'm sorry, one more question if I may. So in regards to what you would have to cut, you mentioned professional development. Now, as I understand it, teachers need so much professional development every year to keep up with things. Is that correct?
The individual teachers need professional development, and we have some requirements through the International Baccalaureate program that require every 5 years that teachers get recertified.
So if this wasn't funded to the level that the original number would say, then would that mean that perhaps we would be in danger of losing the IB program without the professional development needed for the teachers?
Well, we have applied for middle years program certification from grades 6 through 10. It was implemented this year. It will be fully implemented next year, and then in the fall of 20, there will be a verification visit, and that's when they're going to say to us, are all your teachers up to speed with the training for MYP? And if not, the foundation of Groton 2020, which was to build a middle school next to the high school and create an International Baccalaureate campus, that could be undermined.
So you're saying that maybe we would get hurt definitely with supplies, but as far as the IB program, we'd be hurting in a couple of years from this cut?
We definitely could be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Casper?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, is it true that by being below the state average in per pupil spending, it's affecting our impact aid?
No. It doesn't. Impact aid is purely a question, federal impact aid, which comes from Federal Education Department, is purely a question of the children who live on federally impacted property or whose parents work on federally impacted property. So, of course, we get impact aid for all the military dependents, Coast Guard, Navy, what have you. And then we get for all the contractors that work at EB and so forth. This year's, as Mr. Whitney said, this year's impact aid, it was thank God, was a blessing, because last year we got about 80% of our impact aid. It comes in, it's a discretionary fund from Congress, but this year we got a slightly higher amount. So Mr. Knight and I projected for this year, for FY19, that the town would receive $3.2 million of impact aid. In fact, the town has already received 4.5. So there's a $1.3 million unanticipated revenue that the town received. It doesn't come to the board, it comes to the town. But I pointed out to the Education Committee that if the entire amount is funded, to the board's request is funded, there would still be $350,000 that would go to the town general fund or fund balance or wherever it would go. But that was a particular blessing, and it's not a projection. It's actually in the bank. The $1.3 million extra unanticipated, it has already been deposited in the bank for Groton.
Representative Whitehouse?
So the reason the number is moved is because it's the MBR, and I think there's a fear that if we raise the number, of course, then we're stuck with that number. And we have had historically low inflation, but not zero inflation. And I was actually doing some calculations based on the current inflation rates. If we just kept pace with inflation from last year's number to this year's number, it would be $77,428,694. So it's $10,000 higher than just keeping pace with inflation. But if we plug in what we had in 2015 and kept pace with inflation from 2015 to today, the budget would be $82,293,591, which means adjusted for inflation, we've been cutting the school budget every year since 2015. So the 26, that's the number currently on the board there, would in fact be approximately a 1.5% budget cut adjusted for inflation. And so I will of course be supporting the 77, et cetera, figure, but I just want everyone to understand that the second number is a budget cut for the education, and a cut which will be 5 years straight, if I'm counting correctly, the fifth half a decade of cutting the school budget here in Groton, which it may be just because my daughter's about to enter school that I feel strongly about this, but I don't think so. I think it's really because I don't think we should cut the school budget for 5 years straight, especially when we're in an economic boom, and we need to be competitive in all kinds of ways. I hopefully don't need to explain why we shouldn't cut the budget for 5 years straight. But I just want everyone to understand, because sometimes with inflation it's tricky to understand that not raising it is not the same as, it is the same as cutting it. Thank you.
Representative Washington?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, can you tell me specifically what is in this budget that's going to help us to close the achievement gap in the town of Groton? Specifically, what's in this budget? Because I hear you talking about professional development for the IB program.
Right.
I want to know specifically in this budget what's going to help us close that achievement gap that we have had for years.
Well, I would start with what you just said. The MYP program is fully funded, middle years program, the International Middle Years Program, and all of the students, all of the children at the middle school level are participating and will continue to participate in the Middle Years Program. And that program has been duplicated across the country, especially in urban areas where there is high degree of poverty and so forth. And those schools have brought much higher achievement. So just the fact that we're going to MYP, that would be one thing that I would say.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Sure.
So all the students are going to be able to go into the NYP program?
They all are right now.
Okay, they all are. What are you doing to help the students who may not be up to speed in that program?
Well,
do you have any kind of extra help for them?
Right. Well, I'll speak to that in a minute. I just want to be clear. For 20 years or so, Fitch High School has offered a diploma program. And so that sometimes is referred to the IB program. The diploma program is for 11th and 12th graders, and it is highly academically rigorous. What we have opted to do is to go to an instructional program that is currently being implemented at Westside and at Cutler, and at the 9th next year, 9th and 10th at Fitch. And it is providing high-quality, rigorous, engaging instruction for all of those children, and we believe that's going to have a great impact. But the second thing is we also have $3 million for staff just for remedial services. Maybe you could find that object. In the back of your book, under the pink section, this is the budget, by the way, duplicated from the front of the book, but the front of the book is listed by object code, and the pink section, all the pages starting with 5, that has to do with the function. That is to say where we spend the money. So, so if you turn to 5-52, you'll see that these are the funds, and it comes to 2.8 million. Those are the funds specifically targeted at remedial services. Beyond that, we have 3 schools not in this budget, because it's not in the board's budget, but we have 3 schools that have been identified as Title I schools, and they get approximately $333,000 of additional money. That comes from the federal government, from Title I. So we have remedial teachers, we have paraprofessionals, we have support staff, we have tutors. So the board's budget is about $3 million. The MYP budget is across the board. And of course, the budget also includes special education services. Actually, about 22% of the budget includes services for special education. But I can tell you, Representative Washington, that when I first got here, I heard the reputation of the diploma program as kind of just for the most academically rigorous students, and I saw a conference, and it said International Baccalaureate Equity for All, so I signed up for it, and I went to New York City, and I thought, how could International Baccalaureate bring equity for all? And I met educators who came from schools 100% free and reduced lunch, nearly 100% kids of color, black, Puerto Rican, whatever, but 100% International Baccalaureate, and it really threw me, and I dug into that, and it's, as I say, it's been replicated across the country. International Baccalaureate, not only is it a high prestige program, but it is a program for engaging students. For example, all students have to study world languages, including every single special education child. The International Baccalaureate program is a highly engaging program that teaches kids how to learn and how to solve problems. It's not about being an elite smart student. And I can't wait until we fully implement it so that kids will begin in the 6th grade and go 6 through 10, and then at the high school, they can either go to the diploma program or the program that I mentioned a couple of meetings ago, that we are also implementing a career-related program, which is for, not primarily, but largely for students who are not necessarily going to college, but they're interested in engineering, drafting, culinary arts, nursing. So there's and all of that. The whole nursing program is in the budget. The whole engineering program is in the budget. The culinary arts program. So there's a lot of kind of trades type services that are in the budget as well. But for me, the big thing is that we're going to provide a very engaging program in addition to all the remedial services that are provided. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Representative Wells?
I'm reluctant to bring this up again but it happened the last meeting. The representative brought up the question of the Spanish literature. And at the time, it clicked my mind, and I went out and purchased a copy of Eduardo Galeano's Memories of Fire. It has a chapter on the fort at Mystic on the Pequot War in 1636. It's our culture. We're all Americans. Thank you.
Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I wouldn't be adverse to voting for the $77 million budget, but I am concerned that we just did pass a huge school referendum that of $84 million that's going to be part of all of our taxes. So I'm a little reluctant to do that because of that. But Mike, I have a question with regard to the page 16, which is the Smarter Balanced Test percent above goal. What is above goal specifically?
Page 16?
16, yeah. It's got the general information about the town and the test scores.
Which page 16? He's talking about your budget book?
This is our budget book.
Oh.
It's not part of yours. But can you
Mike,
just
do
tell
have
me
that?
what that means in any case?
Could you, I'm sorry.
We have this kind gentleman here. Thank you.
It's the Circ Town profile.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, guys.
I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the
Could you
question?
repeat your question?
Yeah, sure. It's, there's a section under education. It says Smarter Balanced Test percent above
Yeah.
goal,
Okay.
2016, 2017. My question is, what does above goal mean? Because I noticed that, for instance, for grade 8, the town is like 40.1% and the state is 41.8%.
Right.
I assume that's above goal.
Yeah.
And that's for the math section. For the ELA section, which I assume is the language arts,
Yes.
it's 48 for us and 53 for
Right.
the
right.
state. So
Right.
we're a little under there.
Yep.
But what does above goal mean?
Well, yeah, you want to talk about it? Go ahead.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Susan Austin, the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and I oversee testing. And one of the things that the state has done, and I think I've presented here to the RTM, and also I've presented multiple times at the board meetings, but the state has just started implementing this SBAC testing. It's in about year 4. What they look for is growth over time. We compare ourselves to the DIRG, District Reference Group. We compare ourselves to our neighbors. We also look and compare ourselves to the state average to see, but one of the things we have noticed is that we're growing over time, and so that's the data that we look at. So they basically have 4 levels, and the 3rd is called proficiency, and 4th is above. So we're looking for all kids moving towards the levels 3 and 4. So when they say, are they meeting the goal, that's what they're meaning.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. You mean, what's the 3rd and 4th level?
So there's 4 different levels that kids can achieve on the assessment. And so level 3 is a proficiency level, and 4 is, above. So that we're looking for kids to get, but we're not only looking for kids to get to those levels, we're looking for kids to all grow. So if they start out, let's say in 3rd grade at a level 1, we want to see them move to a level 2. And even kids who are in the 4th level, we want to see them even inch up within that band. So you want to see growth every year.
But isn't there a benchmark involved? I mean, how can you measure anything
Let
without
me
a
Let me
benchmark?
just change the test to the SAT, because I think we all understand that a little bit better. So at goal, when you see our SAT scores, at goal means students had to achieve, I think this year was 504. The at level was you had to, in English, you had to at least get a 504 out of 800. With math, I think it was like 496 or something. So what they do statistically is they draw a line. It's a benchmark. So if you meet the benchmark, you're at or above, and if you exceed it, that's that level 4 business that is beyond the benchmark. Does that make sense?
Okay. I guess that, well, how do we move these numbers forward and make them a little bit better than what they are? I remember when I was chairman of the Board of Education, we had the same problem back then.
Right.
That was quite a bit ago. And
Well-
it looks like we're in the same kind
Yeah.
of a situation, and I'm not sure, I wish new schools would translate into
Yeah.
better scores, but
Well, let me speak a little bit. I know there are a few educators on the at least one that I know. No, 2 or 3. The old scores, the Connecticut Mastery Test, which was a wonderful test, by the way, when you were chairman of the board. But we've now gone to this national test, Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, or SBAC, and it's given nationwide to about 33 states, and virtually everyone will agree it is a much more difficult test. In fact, it's pretty humbling. One of these nights, I'll come in and give you the 8th grade one and wish you good luck.
Don't do that.
But so it is a tougher test, that's for sure, because we have new standards and they're more rigorous standards. But
Okay.
you're 100% right, and we aspire to have more and more of our students achieve at higher levels. That is one of the primary drivers, as I said to Representative Washington, that is one of the primary drivers of the middle year program. All kids are going to get a quality literacy program that is going to engage them in learning styles, problem solving, in math, in English, in STEM, in engineering, art, world language, everybody. So we believe that's going to have a significant impact. But I also want to be realistic that this is a tough test. 500 in the SAT is an average. It's a statistical average, and they pitch the test that way. So if a student scores around 500, they are quote quote average. But I will say this about scores, if you let me, Bruce. If you turn to page 3-1. You mentioned new schools, and I am really pleased to show you something. We are bucking a trend in Groton. This year we have increased enrollment. I have lots of colleagues who are superintendents. I don't know anyone who has increased enrollment. We do. And if you look at 3-1, you see we're going up slightly. But if you would look at where it says grand total on that list, go one line up, interdistrict magnet. The interdistrict magnet students in FY16 were 502. And I remember I was here at that time, and I really started to become alarmed at the number of students that we were sending to interdistrict magnets, meaning to New London or to Lurin schools. It then went to 486, then to 462, then to 448, and now it's fallen to 436. The students are coming back to Groton.
That was my next question. Good. Okay, that's great to hear.
And I'm, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'm on the board of directors of Learn, and I'm on the board of directors at New London Science and Tech, and I'm on the board of directors of the Marine Science School. I think choice is great, but when I saw that we were spending about $2.5 million just in tuition, I was alarmed, and that sort of gave rise to Groton 2020. We're building a new middle school. Lots of kids are coming back. We will then, thank God for the referendum the other day, we will be building 2 brand new elementary schools. This school system is being set up for the next 30 to 40 years to have really quality learning facilities.
Good. Now, do we have somebody in the administration paying attention to some of these retail real estate websites like Zillow and making sure that information gets put out there?
Yeah,
because it hasn't been in days gone by.
Well,
we don't look as good, and
yeah,
we should.
It's a bit of a moving target, but yes, we have a communications director, and we get good news. Like last week, U.S. News and World Report again identified Fitch High School as one of the top high schools in the country. It's a bit of a bean counting game, but you're right. We want to be sure that people, when they move to Groton, understand these are quality schools. But also say this, because I was there today. Catherine Kolnowski School, that used to serve, well, it serves the population in the city. The board made it a magnet school, made it a STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. 38% of the students in that school don't live in that neighborhood. That's how popular that themed school is. So what we're hoping is the elementary school that we build on the Cutler site and the elementary school that we build on the west side site, they also will be magnet schools. And so we'll be having children go to their neighborhood schools if they choose, but they'll also have the opportunity to go to any one of the elementary schools in town. So I think that's another exciting aspect.
Good. Yeah, I think perception is a real big deal here, and we need to promote that.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative Streeter?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, I noticed under the benefits portion, if we hadn't had the reduction of almost 10%, that the bottom line would be double what we're asking for, increase. Is this an anomaly, the reduction of this? And will we be anticipating about the same figure next year under benefits, the reduction?
Benefits, thank you. Yeah. I didn't hear you at first. Yes, the benefits, so you're referring to probably that page that I had to
Page
look
2.1.
2.1. Yeah, there's a 8.9% decrease. What the board has done, because the town is self-insured, when we go through a year and we anticipate spending X amount on claims, when that amount is not achieved, it's not reached, because of good fortune, frankly, then that money goes into a health insurance reserve. The health insurance reserve was large enough, Mr. Knight figured that we could actually offset it with taking 1.3 million from the reserve. So that's why that number is relatively low. It will fully fund the health plan, and it doesn't put us in a deficit.
I guess what I'm asking, so this is an anomaly this year, but next year will we have enough reserve to do the same type of figure?
Yeah, we believe yes. You may remember when my first year here, the board had taken 1.4 million out of that account, but it wasn't there. So when I started to put the budget together, there wasn't sufficient money to fund the health insurance account. We believe, we're going to weigh in.
Yeah, I don't think that we'll be able to repeat this again next year. This was an anomaly for this year, the 1.3 million.
So next year we can anticipate an additional $1 million into the budget, thereabouts.
Right, yeah.
Potential.
Potentially.
What do you think? Well, it really depends how we end the year. Right now, we're projecting
like 93% of budget.
If we actually end up paying only 93%, but it's a big number. It's like $14 million. So if we save 7% of that money will go into the reserve. And what would you anticipate we would start the year with?
We'll start next year around 2.9.
So we would have about 2.9 million. So my thoughts are, if we, unless we get a massive increase in health insurance, there would be some funds to offset the increase again. Maybe not to the tune of 1.3 million, but there would be. We're not putting ourselves in a deficit position. So I'm meeting you halfway. I don't want to promise 1.3 million, but I can promise you we are not wiping out the health insurance reserve, so we'd have to start from zero next year.
I'm not concerned about the wiping out the funds. What I'm concerned about is looking toward the future of next year. We're going to be back asking for a larger increase if we keep the level of 1 or 2%, because we're not going to have, there's a possibility we will not have that $1 million that we've taken away this year in the benefits. I'm just posing that, so next year, be aware, it could be coming.
It's a hypothetical, and we'll have several less employees next year through the consolidation at the middle school. So I don't want to make any promises, because the chairman will kick me.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Representative Stevenson, did you have your hand up before? No, okay. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a couple of observations, and then I've done some research, so I wanted to read that. If you look on 1-5, There has been increases over the last 5 years. It has not been flat funded. It was flat funded 1 year, and there was a decrease in 1 year. So it hasn't been flat funded for 5 years, according to your book. The other,
I meant to say this would be the fourth year.
well, even 4 years, it hasn't been flat funded, according to your graph here.
Well, it's less than flat, you're right, because the board gave back to the town $262,000 in FY17.
Well, doesn't that mean you didn't need the money?
No. There was a request and the town was in trouble and the board saw fit to take $262,000. Essentially, it was out of the health insurance reserve.
Okay. All right.
But
so,
you're right, it's less than zero.
Right. So, and the other thing is that you've said at a previous meeting that we're in an alliance district due to truancy and not test scores. Is that still the case? I've heard a lot of...
No, you know, it's interesting. I was at a meeting the other day, and the special ed director was explaining all the various rates of special education for the districts. There are about 20 districts in district reference group G. And as she was going through the list, I thought, isn't that funny? I know all of those towns. And then I said, oh yeah, those are the alliance districts. So I went back to the office and I said, I want you to list out all the districts that are in district reference group G that are like Groton socioeconomically, Killingly, Middletown, Naugatuck, I think, and then list for me GH, which included Norwich and a few other communities, and I, which includes Hartford and New Haven and New Britain and so forth. So I listed all of those, and then I listed the alliance districts next to them, 94%. Virtually every district that was in district reference group G, H, and I are alliance districts. So once I saw that, I realized, well, that's why we're an alliance district. See, the alliance district is an attempt by the state legislature to provide a level playing field for children in the state. Our per pupil expenditure is $16,500. The per pupil expenditure in New Canaan is $25,500. We can't compete with $25,500. So what the state has done is they've said, show me those communities on the socioeconomic level. In other words, family income, education level of the parents, high school graduate, college graduate, the whole spiel. And the districts are listed from A to I. And the last three, G, H, and I, are all alliance districts. And the state, I think appropriately, has said these are the districts where children come to school that in many cases come from lower socioeconomic homes, and it's appropriate for the state to give some extra funding to those towns, and New Canaan doesn't get much of anything. They've got their $25,500 per kid anyway. So it's a nice balancing. So unfortunately, the alliance district, in some people's minds, has a sort of a negative connotation. But I've never heard anyone angrily demand why we are in district reference group G. That's who we are, and as an aggregate. So I think the whole alliance thing, now that I've had a year under my belt, I can tell you that it is not for academic performance. In fact, I was here one time, and I remember somebody saying, "Well, why would we be considered?" You know, next time I come back to the RTM, I don't want to take too much time tonight. I can tell you how they count the points in the alliance district, and you'll understand instantly why we are in that category. But it's because we're in district reference group G.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. The other thing is that it was stated previously that we had to bring you the budget up to the MBR because of, I can't remember why, but we gave you $17,683 to bring you up to the current MBR. And you said that that money would go back to the site budgets. Did that happen?
It did, but that was because of the hurricane relief.
Right.
But they took it away.
Right.
So the MBR is back to the low number on the table.
Okay. All right, so thank you for that. So in my research, I've found a couple of things that I'd like to get out there. I understand that we have some exciting things happening in Groton that will increase the grand list, but until we have money in hand, we must be very cautious about allocating money we don't have yet. The state budget is not final yet, and we still do not know what costs will be shifted to the towns, particularly the contribution for teacher retirements. And let's not let the healthy fund balance burn a hole in our pockets, because we don't know what's coming down the pike. When we come out of the Alliance District designation, we will lose $4.7 million. The requested increase in the budget for 2020 is $952,168. How will we ever make up $6 million when that money goes away?
You want me to answer that, or is that rhetorical?
Well, it's rhetorical.
Okay.
I mean, do you have an answer
I
to
do.
that?
Yeah. I do.
Okay.
Well, I have
That'd be great.
thoughts. I have thoughts about it.
Okay.
I think, well, of course, we don't know where the education cost sharing grant is going to be a few years from now. You're right. The budget, as projected by the governor's staff, indicated that if Groton was not an Alliance District, it would have received $4.7 million less of VCS. Because right now we get $25 million. Where that number evolves to, I really don't know. I think there needs to be a plan. You know, this year the budget that I think would be a fair and equitable budget, everything that I know about for the town, for everything from the police to the park and rec to library and senior citizens. There's a $850,000 increase requested there, which I hope is going to be completely funded, fully funded. But as we project out, I think the town appropriately would lay out some plans. I don't think closing your eyes and saying, well, you know, there might be some tough times coming in 4 or 5 years. I don't know that we're going to lose the Alliance District. It would mean that to lose the Alliance District status would mean that we would have to significantly change the socioeconomic level of the people in this town. No offense to anyone, but I'm happy the way we are. We have a nice, diverse community. I like living here for that reason. And so I don't see us becoming New Canaan anytime shortly. And so I think that the Alliance District status will probably continue. I think as the state moves forward with its own budget planning, the town is going to have to implement a plan. But I think sort of closing our eyes and saying, you know, we should just freeze right now, freeze the town budget, freeze the school budget, and hold our breath for 3 more years. That's not a plan to me.
I don't spend money I don't have, that's all, you know, and if I see something maybe coming down the pike, I'm a little cautious about it. The Board of Ed has DOD money that can be used for any purpose. There has been an accumulation of the DOD money for several years, and as of this writing, which was yesterday, you had $1,055,381. And the impact money is unreliable, as it is difficult to determine the amount Groton will receive because we frequently get catch-up payments due from prior years, and the $1.4 million was received this year in catch-up money, and sometimes we receive less than expected. And to me, you can't increase a budget on a windfall, because what are you going to do next year? So in the years leading up to the approval of the new schools, the information that was repeated numerous times was that there would be significant savings. Why are we now being told there is a cost avoidance? Several schools have closed and still no savings. I don't understand that. We should have realized a big savings on the closing of Pleasant Valley School. We should realize a big savings in the consolidation of the middle schools when the new one opens. And to sum it up, $952,168 increase to the budget, which increases the MBR, and the MBR cannot be reduced thereafter. Then add this to the loss of the 4.7 possibly when Alliance money goes away. Add this to the teacher pensions the town may have to fund that will increase every year. Add this to the other unfunded state mandates. Add this to paying for the new schools for the next 20 years for each bond. We just bonded 20 million. We still have 64 million to go. So it goes on. And so I urge everyone to think about this number and consider the savings of the consolidation of the schools that were promised and possible shift of costs from state to town. And keep the budget at the MBR, the current MBR. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to say that a few of you who have spoken want to speak again, and I'm going through people who haven't spoken first, and then I'll circle back to people for their second time. Representative Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to draw attention to page 2.1, specifically to the increase in salaries. What we see here is a 2.2% increase year over year, which is just over $1 million. That's standard contractual salary increase. Yes, yes. Last year the increase was slightly less, but around about $550,000. So by not increasing the budget last year, we cut $550,000 elsewhere from the schools, and we've done that for the 3 years before this one. Our salaries are a fixed cost that will increase due to contractual obligations henceforth at least 2%. And so to keep a budget frozen is to essentially every year say that you're going to cut more than $1 million from the students of Groton. That is the reality. That's what we're saying, that we're okay with cutting $1 million from the students of Groton. I'm not okay with that. I also know we do have some cost savings coming. We spoke a little bit about the consolidation, and we spoke in the committee meeting about a reduction of about 15 full-time employees due to the middle school consolidation. So I took some average salaries, figured out what our cost savings will be in just salaries, and it's about $700,000. However, then if you add the 2% increase to everyone who's left, it comes out to about $700,000. It's a break even. So even with this consolidation, if we adopt this higher MBR, going into next year, we still most likely will have to cut because our other costs are going to go up. In my mind, we are not doing a service to the students of Groton by freezing the MBR where it is. We have increased every other budget that we voted on due to these exact same salary increases, including the police force. These are just realities. As Representative Whitehouse said, these are basically cost of living increases, and I fully support the higher number approved by the town council and by the committee for all those reasons and more. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Gisela Fleming. Sorry, saying it wrong.
I just want to say, speaking from the point of a parent who actually chose to move back to Groton from Glastonbury because I believe in the education in Groton, we have to keep in mind that we are the representatives of all the citizens of Groton, including the students and the children. So we have to vote with them in mind because that is who we represent. I will be supporting the higher number. That's all I got.
Representative Kachowski.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for all your research. That was amazing. I support the MBR for 2020 for several reasons. One important reason is discussed on page 11 in the town manager's budget letter, and it's been brought up here tonight. He explains that when the Alliance District ends, the town could lose $4.7 million, as we've discussed. Before we raised the MBR this year, I would like to know what the plan is to protect the taxpayers if the town is required to add $4.7 million to the MBR in 2022 before it is raised for 2020. What I'm hearing here tonight is there is no plan. And in addition to that, there could be a potential increase in benefits for 2021, which is why I'm supporting the MBR. At the joint RTM Town Council and Board of Ed meeting, I think it was in February, I asked the superintendent if there are any cost-saving measures in this budget, and you said no. And I was just wondering if that's changed. Is that still true?
Cost-saving?
Anything, any cost efficiency. Is there anything that you've done in this budget to try to save money?
Well, the budget that originally came to me from the principals was about 5% increase, which I didn't think was sustainable. So I worked with them, and we narrowed that down to 2.6%, and I presented that to the board, and the board went through each of the categories and trimmed that down to 1.25%. So, yeah, we've cut a lot out of the budget already.
Okay, I guess I'll have to agree to disagree with you that reducing a proposed increase is not cost savings. Cost savings is reducing your costs.
Yeah. Well, you know, you've heard me say this many times. A budget is really made up, about 80% of the budget is staff. And you're right, we have not reduced staff, not for next year. FY21, you will see several full-time equivalent positions reduced. But no, this budget includes one increase of a teacher, a special education teacher. But other than that, it's the exact same staff. I don't think the budget represents, it may represent some shifting around, but I can't think of anything that we actually cut, because last year was zero and we didn't have a lot to cut from.
I just have one more quick point. I, too, do not like the new Board of Ed talking point about cost avoidance for the 2020 plan. When the plan went to the voters, it was advertised, marketed, 8x10 glossies, cost savings. There will be a cost savings when we get this new middle school. So the new talking point of cost avoidance doesn't really settle well with me.
Well, I would just remind the community that in the year 2000, Groton had 14 schools. I believe in the very near future, you're going to see 7 schools. It's going to be a far more efficient, far more cost-effective district. When I say 14 to 7, that means 7 principals. I'm not sure if they had assistant principals or not. A consolidating of the staff, far more efficient operation. So I think there have been significant savings in the big picture. The problem is when you close a school like Pleasant Valley, the board was facing a $3.4 million cut that year. The board closed the school, saved $1.8 million that year. But the next year, that savings is gone because you're starting from where, you know, as I said to people, the $500 that you saved 3 years ago in the refrigerator doesn't continue year after year. You saved the $500, that's over. So 2 years ago, we did save, no, actually 3 years ago budget, we did save with Pleasant Valley, and we did reduce 19 FTEs.
But the budget didn't go down.
Well, the budget didn't go down because of what Ms. Rogers said. The costs are continuing. What we're hoping to do is contain the costs because it's about 2% a year. You know, the budget, you're 100% right. It needs to go up about 1% or so a year just to break even. And by having 3 years in a row of not having that, we have, in fact, effectively cut the budget by about $1 million a year.
Well, I just want to remind everyone that the Voters voted on a $180,500,000 plan because they were promised a cost savings. And it doesn't seem like we're getting that.
Well, when you go down to 7 schools from 14, you know there's significant efficiencies there.
Thank you.
Thank you. So is there anyone who hasn't spoken who wishes to speak? Representative Richards?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just was looking at the budget on page 1-4 and 1-3. Thank you for including, excuse me, the grant revenue information here. I was curious, though, how these two translate to each other. Is all of the information on 1.4 also listed on 1.3? Are these all?
No, no. The grants that are listed on 1.4, right, we broke them into 2 categories. So the federal, state, the revenues on page 1-3 go directly to the town. We don't see them, but the board, does not see those monies.
Okay.
The grants on page 1-4, for example, Title I, that actually comes to the board, and as I said, about $325,000. It's a $963,000 grant. So $300,000 or so goes to each of our 3 Title I schools. But those monies come to us. All the monies that you see, the $3,135,000, they come directly to the board and are used for the reasons indicated. And then the competitive grants, likewise, categorical grants, meaning Groton board gets those grants because of the category that they fit into, Title I, for example, for remedial services. But the competitive grants, we have applied for federal and Department of Defense education activity, DODEA. We are eligible for those because we have more than 20% of our students are military dependents, and so we get those grants. But those grants come to the board.
But if those are listed on 1.4 here, aren't they also, what's the impact aid on 1.3, federal impact aid?
Impact aid comes from the Federal Education Department, that goes straight to the town.
So those are in addition to each other then?
They are in addition to each
Okay.
other, correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. The other question I had was, since we've been talking about the IB program, is there any consideration for that coming to the elementary schools in our future?
Yes. Consideration. The board would have to, we have 2 new magnet elementary schools, and a number of people think it would be wonderful if one of them could be a primary years program. So then we would have K-12 international baccalaureate, one of the few districts in the country that would have that.
One of my concerns as far as elementary education in Groton is that we don't have second language in the elementary level, and I think that's really sad for the world that we live in.
Primary years program, again, that'd be like a cost thing that we'd have to study, but primary years, the International Baccalaureate program is grounded in proficiency in another language. I'll just give you one quick footnote. I've been an administrator for 30 years, and I always ask the question in world language classes, so tell me what you're learning, but I say it in Spanish or French. This is the only district a kid has ever turned to me and told me what he learned in the target language. It was IB Spanish, and I was like so impressed, because usually, try it out for yourself. Ask a kid what they're learning in the world language that you know. They'll go, nah, I don't do that. These kids, they're proficient.
Well, I'm a professor of anthropology, and I'd love for my daughter to be learning Spanish in elementary school, so yeah, I'm definitely for that. Thank you.
Representative Pasqualini?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a couple comments and then a question. I mean, the budgets grow. You weren't here, Dr. Grenier, when they started the pre-K program. We're wonderful at starting programs because we read something somewhere, or a study was going to be, study was done to show that miracles will happen at the end of 4 years. But we never track any of this and say, it doesn't meet, it doesn't work, we're dropping it. We just keep on barreling along. Pre-K came in and wiped millions out of the K through 12 program with no increases. And now we got the IB program. What's the matrix? At what year will you be able to evaluate to say this is the path we should have stayed on? It's the right path, where our numbers are good, we've increased, we've done something. Is it year 10, year 15? So eventually the public can say, you know what, too much money, let's scrap it. It's not working, or it's not helping.
Is that a real question or rhetorical?
Rhetorical.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Don't get me wound
You
up.
got an answer.
Well, it's like I said to Bruce, we know people are coming back to Groton Middle School. They're not coming back because they don't want an International Baccalaureate. They understand that we have a quality International Baccalaureate program being offered at Westside and at Cutler, and they are coming back. So one metric I would contend would be student enrollment. We have stopped losing students out of district, and we are picking up they're coming back. But you know, the proof of the pudding is going to be the sort of student performance, and I don't want to restrict it to just one test at one time, but I can tell you we have made some significant progress with the SAT scores. We have made across all socioeconomic levels, by gender, by race, by socioeconomic status of their parents. So I think those are very important metrics. I completely agree with you. I recently visited a college with a senior that I know quite well, in as much as in my family. And I said to the college, what do you think about International Baccalaureate? And they said, we flagged those applications right off the bat. We know that the International Baccalaureate is well respected. So there's that aspect of it. But ultimately, the scores are going to be monitored not in 10 years, but immediately. You know, they're literally, you know, I know there's no wood around here to knock. The kids are taking it right now, this week as we speak. They are taking their SBAC test, and in a month ago or so, the kids took the SAT. So we'll get those scores in July, and we'll share them.
Okay. My other question is on the grants. There's 4.6 million listed there. Is that part of the MBR?
No. That is above and beyond the 76, 468, 922. Notice how I can say those numbers quite well. I've been saying them for 4 years.
And under those grants, there's 32 total brand new positions by your personnel.
That's right. Yeah, paid for by, they're not in the budget, but you're right. They're not paid for by the taxpayers, by the board.
Okay, because I want to be able to track that, so if there is a budget situation, again, when a program is either working or not working, if it's not working, we're dropping, that means we're losing personnel, we're not picking them up to move somewhere else that now become part of.
Here's my promise. When we go after a grant, we in every case that I'm aware of, and Ms. Austin and I work hard at this, we write a grant. So 3 years ago, we got a grant for Columbia University writing teachers to come and help our teachers. They will come for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, we're going to have some super trained teachers, or continue to be super trained teachers, and they will go back, and we will be a better writing district for it, and the grant goes away, and they go away. We're not going to continue this. The chairman continually talks to me about sustainability. If we have a program, is it sustainable? And we're not going to start a program on a grant and then 3 or 4 years from now say, well, you have to pick it up. We don't do that.
The 1.3 million, that was DOD? Was it
No,
the DOD?
federal impact aid.
The federal impact aid. Is there, I don't know if John is here, is there any way you can get the money with not affecting the MBR? The problem is this, it's like a union contract. I'll give you a bonus, but it doesn't affect your, because the MBR is the problem. It keeps going up. It can never go down. So You want to do a good year, things look good, here you go, get your stuff done. Next year, we're in a problem, we're stuck, we can't go below. It'd be easier just to say, here's the 1.3, you stay at the MBR, we're good. You got 1.3 million.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect.
We accept that deal. No, we can't. We can't.
You know what I'm saying? If
Yeah,
it's
no,
for,
I hear you.
If it's for that and it's
Yeah,
for
I
the
hear you.
schools and for that system, that's where it should go back to.
Right, right.
But not
Yeah.
with the MBR.
The problem is, well, it's not a problem. The state gives Groton $25 million because those New Canaan guys have a lot of money. So Groton gets $25 million. The federal government says, and some of us are frustrated with this, that they give us about $3,500 per child, per military dependent. And it obviously $3,500 does not pay for a $16,500 education. So we are always lobbying for more impact aid. But the state aid and the federal impact aid go right to the town. It's revenue for the town. You know, that's the way they see it. The MBR is a sort of a Connecticut. There's a history, and I'll tell you about it sometime.
Thank you.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Board of Ed and Dr. Grenier and Susan Austin for coming. I do feel that we provide a decent education here in the town of Groton, and I support the opening of the new middle school, because to me that's not a monies or a savings issue. It's actually accountability and putting everybody on the same playing field, where in Groton for a long time, as a former student of Groton, by the time you got to Fitch High School, you saw the difference. You knew the difference, and there was a definite two different sides of this town. So the opening of Groton Middle School, which I actually love the name, is actually, to me, has a lot of meaning, and it brings Groton together at an earlier point than waiting until high school. With that being said, I look at the numbers, and once again, I think you said it nicely, we advocate for the children. And coming from my district, looking at Westside Middle School scores, looking at the Next Generation Accountability Index that Susan Austin so nicely presented several months ago, looking at the performance of all students under the ELA, the state was 90.1, Cutler Middle School 96.3, Westside came in at 85.8. I apologize, my vision's a little off, so I'm doing a little of this, I apologize. Math performance index of all students, the state average was 86.3. Cutler Middle School came in at 87.4, Westside at 77.2. So as a parent and as an RTM representative of District 2, and my concern, a lot of people keep saying things will change when we get this new middle school, and I truly believe, and this is not a direct identifying factor of the quality of the teachers that we have at Westside or at Cutler. I think they're equally divided. The skill set and the training that these teachers get, I support 100%. But what happens is when you have students that aren't on grade level, they need the support, and the teachers can only do so much. So looking at these numbers, my questions are, if we're getting a Title I funding for Westside, what % of that is going into remedial support, making sure that all of those students that are performing below state level on that side of town are being identified and closing those achievement gaps like they should? Westside also is a predominantly military middle school out of the two. So then we talk about DODEA funds. What % is being used in Westside to make sure that those students are getting the support that they need? At one of the meetings we talked, you guys discussed the funds being at about $154,000 remaining. Where are we at today on that?
Excuse me about that. Unexpended balance.
Unexpended, 190, I think, 190.
Okay. And at one of the other meetings I attended, you also had stated that 12-point-something% was going to go back into the site budgets. Did that happen already?
No. Well, what Representative Bordelon is talking about is, at the beginning of the year, I authorized the principals to spend 75% of their site budget, and I hold back 25 just as a kind of rainy day fund. And then on I think it was the 1st of April, if I'm not mistaken, I said take half of the 25 that we held back, and probably May 15th, please God, we're through the year pretty much. I'll release all of it, and the principals are working with Mr. Knight on that.
Okay, so without a MBR going up in this fiscal year, we could feasibly say that the site budgets would be fully funded based on the revenues that
They
we
would
have
be
left.
fully funded at 75% of last year. So when I say fully funded, I'm talking about a budget that was already cut by 25%.
Okay. So once again, I'm concerned about students not making the grade, falling below the state, averages. I understand that this is a hard test, and in comparison to the old testing, I think it was MAP testing possibly, if I'm right, I might be wrong. West Side was still low on that side of town. Even with those identifiers, they were falling underneath the outliers. So I am really excited, and I think the town voted, and we should have the tax increase when that time comes to support the middle school. Once again, I think we have great teachers. I just would like to see more support and looking at the schools that are pooling into West Side, like Mary Morrison, it used to be PV, but Catherine Kolnowski, making sure that they're being identified earlier than coming into West Side. And then when they get there, if the numbers are still where they are, making sure that we're providing even more remedial support. So if it's 2 at one school and 1 at the other, maybe West Side needs 3 in that area. Any support and any intervention you can give them before they get to that high school is going to be key. I'd like to move another number. I'd like to move $76,957,506. That's half of the 1.2%.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
76,957,506. I feel like that number is somewhere.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you.
I feel like that number is somewhere in between. I feel like it is a raise. We talk about the consolidation of the new middle school and the fact that we are going to be losing about 15 teachers possibly. Maybe some retirees will come in and maybe teachers won't be lost. That's always the hope. We hate to lose some of our teachers. But I feel at that time it would give an increase while assessing where we will fall with the new middle schools coming on, new middle school coming on site, and see to better assess at that point. It would be an increase in the MBR, and that's a number that I'd like to consider. And thank you again.
So we have another motion on the floor for $76,957,506, made by Representative Bordelon and seconded by Representative Washington. Is there any, I had Representative Casper from before, so I'll accept. Do you have any thoughts on that? You wanted to speak or no?
Well, I do want to speak.
You can speak if you want. I have you on the list.
This is a new number.
I know. Just he's on the list. So people have been waiting a long time. That's why I'm tapping in another. There's 2 people on this other list.
Speak. Okay. Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is going to be like a commercial for our school, our high school in particular, about what's something I feel is missing. Be a big opportunity. I tried to mention it before, but it hasn't gotten anywhere. But it has to do with the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, which is the world's largest aviation community, is building an aviation STEM curriculum for high schools across America. And thanks to generous donations to the AOPA Foundation, all courses are offered to the high schools at no charge. These courses are aligned to rigorous math and science standards used in many states nationwide, and they're creating 2 career paths, one for manned aircraft and one for unmanned aircraft systems, commonly called drones. And this is to address a shortage of 790,000 new pilots that will be needed by 2037.
Madam Moderator, point of order.
Yes.
I'd like to know what the connection is in talking about curriculum to our budget.
It's to make Groton High School more attractive And if it had an aviation, it has an airport which is underutilized, and if it could attract, it provides another career path for students, one that really has some excitement to it, and they would be, I think it would be a plus to the town to have this program.
I would agree with Representative Massett, unless there's a budgetary link with your statement. I think it's better to maybe present it at a
free.
Board of Ed meeting. Thank you. Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is just a point of information about the elementary school foreign language program. That was approved by the Board of Education at one point. I know that to be true because I made that proposal and the board voted for it. So we did have that okay once upon a time to put foreign languages in the elementary schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Monahan?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just briefly, I'll be supporting the 77,438 figure that was supported by the Town Council. I think it's appropriate. I think, after 4 years of no increases, meaning cuts, I think that's the best thing to do for our children.
Thank you. Representative Washington, did you have your hand up?
I think that the number that Representative Borderline put up is a decent number. It will go with Representative Rogers saying that, we need money in the budget for the 2% increase. So that might balance that out. I just have two comments. I was a little confused, Dr. Grenier, when you said that now we're Alliance District because of the money that we get from the state. And I was under the impression we were Alliance District because of our student achievement. But now you switched it up and you said you're saying something different.
Right.
With a whole year, we thought it had to do with based on student achievement.
Well, the Alliance District is based upon criteria. I didn't realize that criteria was virtually identical to the district reference group criteria. So it is written up as, quote, performance, but once I did the analysis, I realized that it is not about academic performance. As I said before, the way they count, I'll come back and give you a detailed analysis, but the students with a lower socioeconomic level count twice as much as all the other students. And so it is heavily weighted. The state is heavily weighting it towards communities that are going to struggle to provide a quality education for students, which is essentially the same thing that they do with district reference group. That's why you have ECS based essentially on what economic group you're in.
And when they told you that Groton was going to be an Alliance District, they told you this information? They gave you that information?
Well, unfortunately, they didn't tell me anything. And to make matters worse, they didn't give us, unlike all the other, except one, Alliance districts, they didn't give us any money. So we have to meet all the requirements, reporting requirements, but we don't get any money. But there is a bill in the Senate and in the House that is requesting that money. But I would just say one thing, since you seconded the number. The third number on the floor is a reduction of $480,584. That is almost exactly what we cut from the site budgets. And I would be heartbroken. I don't know if there are any principals here, but I know they would be heartbroken if we took $480,000 out of the pockets of our children for books and field trips. And I would urge everyone not to support that, but to, in fact, support the full budget.
And my other comment is, can't we just give our students a vigorous, and not a decent, a rigorous education without having an IB and this and that? Just give them a rigorous education, and because that's what they need. All students need that, and I feel when you say, oh, now we can give them this rigorous education because we're going to have the NYP IP program.
Right.
I'm thinking, well, what did they have before?
Well, there were, I think a few speakers have mentioned that there were some inequities, and we are ending those inequities.
Thank you. Representative Massa, did you have your hand up, or was that the point of order? Okay. Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a quick question. I know for a couple of years now we've been talking about the IB certificate program. It's the only one as far north as East Catholic High School in Manchester, right? And we've been talking about possibly having people who enjoy the rigorous opportunity of the IB certificate program would pay to come to Fitch and do that.
Yeah.
Have we, I mean,
No,
12 people, you could make easily $100,000.
Well, we requested that Fitch High School years ago, and I've continued to make this request, be identified as a magnet school, like marine science. But the state provides a very big subsidy for the students who go to that. So when a town sends some student to marine science, let's say a Ledyard student, Ledyard pays about $5,000, but the state kicks in about another $10,000. So they have steadfastly said we cannot be a magnet school, inter-district magnet school. We could, and we are open, and the board has established a tuition, and we do get inquiries about students coming. And I know people have toured the school and toured the International Baccalaureate program, and we would welcome them with open arms.
I know we've talked about this before, not because I know the state won't allow the interdistrict magnet program, but parents send their kids to Williams, they send them to St. Bernard for a lot more money than we would have to charge for this incredibly rigorous program that's so well known in all these universities.
Yes.
I just don't understand why we don't put it out there. Parents would pay.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that for a couple of years, and you know
Yep.
some people that
Yep.
were interested in doing that. You know, there's an opportunity for making money that, with this unique thing that only Groton has, that you work so hard to put into place.
Yeah.
We should use it.
I'll talk to our communications person. I hear you.
Representative Frickman?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to say that, first of all, I can't support a decent number for our students, but I can support the original number of 77 million. In my opinion, we need a good number for these kids. I will say that many of the parents and constituents in my district, we voted for the new schools. We voted actually to build new schools and good quality schools, not necessarily for cost savings. It was for long-term, we knew. Long-term, we're going to pay more. We're going to pay an increase in taxes. That was part of the deal. And we approved that, and most of the town did so. I also wanted to add to, I can't support a cut to our site budgets. I can't support, my son goes to SB Butler, put that out there right now. I can't support a cut to the after-school programs he goes through, the reading literacy programs those teachers have done. It's an amazing program this year. My son loves it. All of his friends like it. I also can't support a cut to the math programs they get to do after school, the field trips these guys get to do. By cutting the site budgets, they don't get any of that. And he's got 2 more years in that school, and I can't support those cuts. I had one more thing. That's it. Thank you.
Representative Whitehouse?
A couple quick points I want to mention. First, one school you didn't mention was Lyme High School, which actually has an active marketing campaign that they're using to do exactly what we're discussing. And I think their slogan is something like a private school experience in a public school environment or something like that. So they're very effective platform there. And the other thing I want to touch on is I don't think I've heard anyone explicitly say it, but there's kind of an undercurrent of kids care about schools, parents care about schools, but people who don't have kids in the schools are kind of supporting someone else's thing, kind of like if somebody had their own trash pickup, paying for public trash pickup would be almost charity. And I just wanted there's a quote I was looking for, and I found it from John Green, who is a famous author who does not have children, who explains it far better than I can. And he says, public education does not exist for the benefit of students or for the benefit of their parents. It exists for the benefit of the social order. We have discovered as a species that it is useful to have an educated population. You do not need to be a student or have a child who is a student to benefit from public education. Every second of every day of your life, you benefit from public education. So let me explain why I like to pay taxes for schools, even though I don't personally have a kid in school. It's because I don't like living in a country with a bunch of stupid people.
Thank you.
Said much better than I can. But that's the whole point. Is this isn't about, do you have kids in school? How long will your kids be in the school? What do they get out of it? It's, I don't want to live in a town full of a bunch of stupid people. You know, I want us to be well educated. It builds our economy. It benefits everyone, whether we have children in the school or not, whether we're parents or not. And so I will certainly be supporting the 77, the original town council number. Thank you.
Representative Whitney.
Thank you. Representative Frickman said a lot about what I agree. I would like to say that I certainly won't support the MBR number or the halfway number. I don't think decent schools are good enough. It reminds me of that commercial, I could paraphrase, we are one of the schools in the county. Not necessarily a good one, but one of these schools. I think we want to be able to say we're one of the great schools systems in the county. And to do that, we really need to keep pace with inflation, with rising wage and benefit costs. And we haven't been. And because of that, the site budgets have been cut. And the students right now are taking these SBAC tests that we're talking about as a main measure of accountability and trying to measure our performance going forward. I've seen the computers they're working on. They are not new generation or current generation, and some of them are falling apart. And my daughter told me today that some of the stuff she was listening to was fuzzy, and so she had to replay it again on a test. So we need to fund our schools to an adequate level, and that helps the whole town, as I think we all know. And in terms of the uncertain future for state funding, yes, that's there. But time and time again, this town rallies for its schools in large numbers. And so I think we'll come out for that. So we have to, as Representative Rogers say, support the schools and represent our community for that. And I'll point out, we do have these new schools that we're building, and that's wonderful. But to be a school system, we need to educate our students. So we need great teachers, we need students who are learning and have the tools they need to learn. Finally, I'd like to say that every budget item we're going through, we're looking at increases, and most of them are just cost of doing business increases, whether it's personnel, whether it's other costs that's going up. The number that I'll support is the one that town council supported, and our committee did too. That represents a 1.2% increase from last year. That's what, $952,000. For reference, the town operations proposed budget is up 4.3%. So percentage-wise, that's much larger, but monetarily it is too. It's a 1.4, actually it's almost $1.5 million requested increase. So I don't want to be part of a town that it can support its police, which we should, support its highways, which we should, but we don't support what the education needs, because at the MBR, or even at this level, we're sliding backwards.
I'd like to recognize Mayor Granatowski, an ex officio member of this body.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I've been sitting back here listening to the discussion. It's a very good discussion. I love hearing from all of you. I wasn't here at the beginning because I had the pleasure of attending the Fitch High School National Honor Society induction, and that was remarkable, and you should be very proud of your high school students. And there were dozens and dozens, I don't know how many, but they passed candles, if you know the NHS ceremony, and the current members had to come back 2 and 3 times to pass the candles on, because there were so many kids that are doing really high quality work and doing service for the community and doing really great things, and you should be proud of that because you support that. Some of those kids go on to very fine institutions of higher learning, and I don't know if you saw the presentation last night at the town council meeting, but we have a developer on board for the Groton Heights School, and that developer is a high-tech company called Thayer Mahan. And they just happen to have 2 Fitch High School graduates on staff. engineers doing very high-level work for them. And again, you should be very proud that those kids come out of our public school system. I support the town council number, obviously, and I hope you will too. Dr. Grenier was touching on the idea of the site budgets. And the site budgets were not funded completely last year. What was it, 75%? So I'm a teacher, and when you don't have things to teach the kids, it's a problem. So if we can just restore the site budgets, that's a big step to helping the kids in the classroom, to helping the teachers do their jobs. Trying to think what else I heard when I was sitting back there that I wanted to address. I hope you take the time. You have 3 numbers up there. There's a big difference in those numbers. And what Representative Frickman was saying regarding the referendum votes, I think he's correct that many people voted knowing full well that there would be increase when the schools were built. And I think they know that it's an investment in the community. And if we want to have those engineers, the high-tech workers coming in for Pfizer, for EB, if we want them to stay in our community, we want good schools. And that doesn't mean just a building. That means the quality of the program offered within the school. So I hope you will consider and weigh the value of the number that the council passed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Representative Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a quick point of clarity. Since it was mentioned about the increases in salaries, if we were to just cover the increase in salaries and nothing else this year, we would be passing a budget of $77,561,245. So please keep that in mind, that the highest number on the board here is less than the increase in salaries. And also, we've heard some talk about thinking about the future, preparing for the future, and I believe, as the mayor just said, that investing in our schools is an incredibly smart strategy for growing Groton and growing our tax base. And we haven't talked enough about that. Yes, it serves our students. Of course, I care about the children, but this is going to make Groton a more attractive place for people to live. And that helps everyone in the town, children or no children in the system.
Representative Mello Miller.
Dr. Grenier, can you remind me how many military children are served by Groton Public Schools?
About 1,000.
1,000. And of those military families, how do you know approximately how many kind of stay on for more than a couple of years? For instance, depending on what the parent is doing. Do you know? Do they typically stay for a few years?
Well, it depends. At the element, we have way more elementary because the military personnel who come frequently to the base are junior enlisted, so they're sometimes there for 5 or 6 months of training, and then they move on. At the upper grades, you see last at the middle school last, and then at the high school. So the people who stay here for quite a long time are limited. Far more at the elementary level.
Do you happen to have an approximation of how many, do you keep track of, I know you have of active military personnel, do you have an approximation of retired military personnel, families and children? Do you know that number?
I do.
My point being is that as a military spouse, as a mom of 1 child in the school system and 1 in a couple of years, it's families like mine that are staying in this area. My husband is due to retire in a few years, and we have decided to make Groton our home. I am not the only family that has decided to do this. And if we could start recording numbers on the number of military families that do stay in the area, I think that residents would find that the majority, I would say at least 50%, is that's just my personal knowledge, stay in the area as retirees. There are wonderful jobs for after military, and the children grow up here and they continue in our schools. The reason why you don't have a lot of kids in high school as with active duty is because those parents generally retire but those children generally stay. We are one of those families, and there's many more. And with this IB program, with these wonderful programs, you are welcoming more and more people, not just from Pfizer, not just from EB, but military families that want good schools. This original number of 77 is going to keep attracting families to Groton, just like mine, to stay here for years to come. Thanks.
Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. Representative Pasqualini?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We've been going over this for an hour and a half, and I would expect that my constituents should know which way they're voting or on what number, or if they had their questions answered, so I asked to move the question.
Second.
All right, it's not debatable. We have a motion to end debate by Representative Pasqualini. It's been seconded by Representative Bailey. Do you want to do a roll call? No. Okay, all in favor of that, please raise your hand. Any opposed, please raise your hand. Did you get Richards and Bordelon? Okay. Thank you. Any abstentions? One abstention. That motion passes, but 31 in favor, 4 opposed, 1 abstention. So we have a number on the floor, $76,957,506. I think, are we going to do a roll call vote on that? I think we're doing a roll call vote on this.
First number. Ready? Okay. Okay. Adams?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Bordelon?
Yes.
Casper?
No.
Chase?
Yes.
DeSilva Fleming, sorry.
No.
Frickman?
No.
Gustafson?
No.
Hanscom?
No.
Katowski? Katowski?
Yes, she said yes.
I didn't hear. Martin?
Yes.
Massett?
Yes.
McDermott?
Yes.
Melendez?
No.
Miller?
No.
Merritt?
No.
Monahan?
No.
Newsom?
Yes.
Pasqualini?
Yes.
Perry?
No.
Powers?
No.
Sean? Oh. Quinn?
Yes.
Richards?
No.
Rogers?
No.
Stanford?
No.
Starkley?
No.
Stevenson?
No.
Streeter, aye.
No.
Streeter, J.
No.
Strode?
No.
Washington?
Yes.
Wells?
No.
Whitehouse?
No.
Whitney?
No.
Emma, I'm sorry, Evan?
No.
And Kay Powers?
No.
Okay, so we have 12 yes and 24 no.
Okay, that motion fails. 12 in favor, 24 opposed. Oh, any yeah.
No, that's everybody.
Thank you. All right, we have another motion on the floor for $76,485,922. You want to do a roll call on that or no?
Yep, we have
We'll
to.
do a roll call on that too.
This is question 2. This is question 1. Okay. Bailey?
Yes.
Oops, Adams, I'm sorry, I skipped right over you.
Yes.
Okay. Casper?
No.
Bordelon, I am all goofed up here. My sheets, I'm sorry. No, why did I skip? Okay, no, I've got Bailey, I've got Adams. Adams is yes.
Yes.
Bailey is yes. Bordelon is no. Casper?
I never even voted, actually.
Oops, sorry. I thought I,
My answer is no.
okay, I thought I heard you say no. Casper?
No again.
Okay. That's the no I heard. Chase?
Yes.
Distiller Fleming, I'm going to send that out.
No.
Frickman?
No.
Gustafson?
No.
Hanscom?
No.
Katowski?
Yes.
Martin?
No.
Massett?
No.
McDermott?
No.
Melendez?
No.
Mello Miller?
No.
Merritt?
No.
Monahan?
No.
Newsom?
No.
Pasqualini?
No.
Perry?
No.
Powers?
No.
Quinn?
Yes.
Richards?
No.
Rogers?
No.
Stanford?
No.
Starkley?
No.
Stevenson?
No.
I. Streeter?
Yeah, or no.
J. Streeter?
No.
Washington? I'll get her. I'll get her. Strode?
No.
Wells?
No.
Whitehouse?
No.
Whitney?
No.
Eben?
No.
K. Powers?
No.
Okay. That's, no. 5 in favor and 31 opposed.
5 in favor, 31 opposed. That motion fails. We have another number on the table. $77,438,090. Do you want to do a roll call on this one?
Adams?
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 Yes. Discuss only yes.
Bailey?
No.
Bordelon?
Yes.
Casper?
Yes.
DeSiller Fleming?
Yes.
Chase?
No.
Frickman?
Yes.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Hanscom?
Yes.
Katowski?
No.
Martin?
Yes.
Massett? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I know. McDermott?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Mello Miller?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Newsom?
No.
Pasqualini?
No.
Perry?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Quinn?
No.
Richards?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yes.
Stanford?
Yes.
Starkley?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
I. Streeter?
Yes.
J. Streeter?
Yes.
Strode?
Yes.
Washington?
No.
Wells?
Yes.
Whitehouse?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Eben?
Yes.
K. Powers?
Yes.
29 in favor, 7 opposed.
29 in favor, 7 opposed. That motion passes. So at this point, it's 10:15. It's actually, 10:15. I'd like to recess for 5 minutes, but I want to, before you buzz off, we have, I think, 4 items on the CIP, and I want to take the vote now. I mean, I think we can come back and do a few of those, probably all of them. I don't think they'll take that long. Who would like to stay after the 5-minute recess and finish the CIPs? Who wouldn't like to? Who wants to go home? All right, I think we'll be able to stay. So please come back in 5 minutes. And there's delicious treats from District 4.
police department, so forth and so on, and we always had the ability to decrease it. But with the Board of Ed budget, it's kind of tricky, because once you increase, you're stuck with that increase. And we see things coming down the road, so it's not that we're against education. I don't want people to think, oh, they're against education. I'm not against education. My daughter went through the school system. I'm for education, so I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Representative Whitney, would you like to finish your minutes? Just go again, one by CIP by CIP. Thank you.
Right. The next agenda, next item on our minutes is FYE 2020 Budget CIP 5A, Asbestos Removal. And that's page 227 on your books. I'll wait for you to turn.
Please read, you can read your minutes.
Yep. So the motion by Representative Gustafson to recommend $518,000 for CIP 5A asbestos removal was seconded by Representative Bailey. It was discussed and it was passed 6-0. Voting in favor was everyone. Voting against, none. Superintendent Grenier indicated that asbestos removal from Fitch High School can be completed this summer if funded, and the town can seek partial reimbursement from the state. Representative Bordelon asked why asbestos removal wasn't completed long ago. The superintendent said that funds have been requested for at least the last 6 years. Committee members asked about interruption of summer activities at Fitch. The superintendent said there would be a 3-week period during the summer when no activities could be held in the school. And so with that, I move $518,000 for CIP 5A asbestos removal.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for CIP 5A asbestos removal made by Representative Whitney for $518,000 and seconded by Representative Gustafson, I believe.
Yep, that's what I heard.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Representative Whitney, I just wanted for clarification in part of my discussion. I had stated that I was wondering why the asbestos hadn't been removed prior. Which was not noted is the fact that I had stated the asbestos being removed. Why was it not removed during the addition of the new school being added on to Fitch High School? That's what I was asking. At that time, the school was already being ripped apart, and I was concerned as to why we added on a brand new section of the high school onto an old existing building that had asbestos in it. How come we didn't bond or budget all the repairs that the old section would have needed to make sure the school was fully functional at its proper level, versus going back later and putting all these additions on it, what have you, which was my other question too, is regarding like the lead water and the asbestos and the condition of the field house and all the other sections of the building, that windows and things that were not touched at the time that this town voted to renovate our new high school and put that addition on. So keeping that in mind in the future, that we, you know, when we do something like that onto an old structure, we should take into account what those repairs are going to look like and start to add those kind of in. Thank you.
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, at the bottom of this CIP, it states that the State Department of Education grants reimburse about 50% of this. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Representative Pasqualini?
Am I misreading this? This is a reallocation of funds from 2016, so it's not really. Why is it coming through a CIP? Normally, don't we just do that at a regular meeting?
It's a partial reallocation. I'll let Mr. Kilpatrick explain.
Yeah, there was money allotted for this in a previous iteration. About $370,000 for the high school, and the other balance of the 518 were the project at Claude Chester School came in under budget. So it's actually the leftover funds from that project at Claude Chester and the money from the high school that was previously allotted. One of the key things in doing the high school, that while there was some money allotted for the high school, it would have had to been done during 2 different summers. And because the CIP is being approved this late in the season, we would not have time to actually do the project this coming summer. It actually would have to be applied to, we'd have to apply for the grant with the state so that it would actually be done during the summer of 20, not 19.
It's not new money. It's not new money. I was about to say.
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
Normally we do that during a regular meeting.
Well, it's new money because that money had to, those projects had to be closed out and that money had to be returned to the town. So it's actually, it's the same amount of money, but.
In effect, it's really not new money.
All right, seeing no other hands in the, Representative Katowski.
I just have a quick question. At the town council budget deliberations, I believe Mr. Kilpatrick said that $370,000 was approved 3 years ago, and the project wasn't done, so it was left over. So the money went back to the general fund?
That's what you just said.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
That's essentially correct. We
Okay.
never used that 370,000.
Thank you. Are we ready, Representative Whitehouse?
Quickly, I want to point out, at previous meeting, I remember us discussing concerns about money going into CIPs and kind of hovering there or being reallocated and whatnot. And so it sounds like you're doing the right thing here, that it went back to the fund. Now we're going to look at it again, allocate it properly. So I appreciate the transparency in this process. Thank you.
All right, we have a number on the floor for $518,000. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. 36 in favor.
So 1 point, I'm going to amend the minutes for Representative Bordelon.
Thank you.
The previous sentence was Representative Bordelon asked why asbestos removal wasn't complete long ago. I'm replacing long ago with when the school addition was completed. Okay. The next item is FYE 2020 budget CIP 5D, Claude Chester. That's page 228. Motion by Representative Gustafson to recommend $30,000 for CIP 5D, Claude Chester. Seconded by Representative Bailey. Discussed. Passed 6-0. And that's unanimous. Superintendent Grenier explained that the in-ground oil tank at Claude Chester is no longer in use, is past its permissible lifetime, and must be removed.
All right, sorry.
And so I move $30,000 for CIP 5D, Claude Chester.
Second. Adams.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for CIP 5D, Claude Chester, $30,000 made by Representative Whitney and seconded by Adams. Thank you, Representative Adams. Is there any questions on this? No? Seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. $30,000 for a new oil tank at Claude Chester. No, sorry. Removal, sorry. Removal of the oil tank at Claude Chester.
And the trick to see if you're paying attention.
There you go, sorry. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 36 in favor. Thank you.
The next item is FYE 2020 budget CIP 5I, Fitch High School Athletic Facilities, page 229. Motion by Representative Gustafson to recommend $300,000 for CIP 5I, Fitch High School Athletic Facilities. Seconded by Representative Bailey, discussed, and passed 6-0. Superintendent Grenier pointed out that the tennis courts at Fitch High School are cracked, are becoming unsafe, and the surface and substrate urgently need to be replaced. So I move $300,000 for CIP 5I, Fitch High School Athletic Facilities.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor for $300,000, excuse me, for Fitch High School athletic facilities, made by Representative Whitney and seconded by Representative Gustafson. Are there any questions on this? Representative Pasqualini?
Am I misreading this? Request for FYE 20 funds is $110,000 to resurface and crown the football field, and $300,000 for the resurface of the court. So my math is $410,000.
And then read the bolded part right after that.
But you're only going to do the resurfacing of the courts this year? Okay.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Another part of the discussion that is omitted out of that those minutes also stated that I had concerns with the overall well-being and structures of all of our sports facilities. We are behind the curve on all of it. This is great. The tennis courts needed to be repaired when I was there in mid-90s. The football field, the field house, and all the exterior structures, we do not compete with other districts in the area. The maintenance lacks, the fields and things aren't in the best shape. So, you know, I did state that, and looking at it, if we're going to pay this much money, $300,000 to restructure these tennis courts, I just hope that we have a plan in sight. Like, where are we going? I agree that this needs to be passed and to be fixed, but moving forward, looking at our campus as a whole, we lack in sports fields and facilities and the maintenance thereof them and the quality of them to be competitive. We can have a competitive IB program, we can have a competitive academics and wonderful teachers as well as coaches, but we have to have the facilities to support the type of students you want to attract. The bleachers, the paint's peeling green off on kids' hands as they sit in the stadiums, the bathrooms. I attended the baseball game a couple weeks ago. The building's closed, and we do not have adequate facilities at the tennis courts when the match was going on. It's a non-handicapped outhouse there. We just need to, if we're going $300,000 on a tennis court, I guess I hope that the district will start to come up with a plan as to how we want to move fixing and bringing our sports facilities up to par.
Thank you. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just for a point of clarification, when you say resurface, does that mean you're just covering over what's there, or are you tearing it up and putting new?
Generally speaking, depend upon the condition of that actual court itself. It may be just scarifying it and resurfacing it, but some of these cracks in there may actually require actually picking up the pavement and relaying the entire surface.
Can you do pieces of it, you mean? Is that what you're going to do?
Well, there are 6 courts here, so there's two different sections. One is in worse condition than the other.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This $110,000 we're not doing this year, is that going to increase as time goes on, or is that going to pretty much stay the same and we can take care of that later?
I would hope it would stay close to the same. It'd probably be slightly increased, I would think, depending upon how long we wait to do it. But it should be in that ballpark anyways.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands raised, I think we're ready to vote on $300,000 for CIP 5I Fitch High School athletic facilities, focusing on resurfacing the tennis courts. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes 36 in favor, none opposed.
Okay, and I'm going to amend the minutes to add the sentence, Representative Bordelon expressed concerns with the overall quality of Fitch athletic facilities and the need for a plan for improvement going forward, if those are approved. The next item is FYE 2020 budget CIP 5L, refinish exterior Glulam beams, page 230. Motion by Representative Gustafson to recommend $100,000 for CIP 5L, refinish exterior Glulam beams. Seconded by Representative Bailey. Discussed. And then we had an amended motion by Representative DeCelia Fleming to recommend $0. seconded by Representative Bordelon, discussed, failed 3-3, no abstentions. Voting in favor, Representative Bordelon, DeCillier, Fleming, and Bailey. Voting against, Representative Gustafsons, Rogers, and Whitney. The original motion to recommend $100,000 discussed failed 3-3. Voting in favor, Gustafson, Rogers, and Whitney. Voting against, Representative Bordelon, DeCillier, Fleming, and Bailey. The committee did not agree on a recommendation for this CIP. Superintendent Grenier explained the exterior wooden beams at Catherine Kolonowski and Northeast Academy have a 10-year outer weather surface that needs to be refurbished. Representative Eben and committee members criticized the poor planning of using materials that need regular and costly maintenance. The superintendent noted that the planned new schools will not have any similar exterior beams. Committee members urged solutions to avoid having to repeat costly resealing every decade and expressed a strong desire for more project information. The superintendent said he would provide more detail at the RTM budget meeting.
We have minutes on the floor, so is there any discussion on those minutes? You have discussion on the minutes?
Yes, Madam Moderator.
Okay.
I request an amendment to the minutes concerning the Glulam beams.
Okay.
The motion of 0 was not really to not fund it. It was basically that there might be a better method as far as maintenance of sealing them. I don't want to mention a company's name because I'm not going to promote anything like that, but if there was some time taken to consider the other possibility of using a different type of preservative for those beams, and the whole part of that 0 was to not to mess anything or hold anything up. It was just a tactical tripwire just for reconsideration of another way for preservation of those beams. And also discussed was the warranty on this maintenance, if it's guaranteed, and what time length that would be. That's all. I appreciate that.
Representative Bordelon, do you have comments on the minutes as well?
Yes, and also one of the other reasons why it was a 3-3 vote, Mr. Kilpatrick was not in attendance of our committee meeting for the CIPs. Therefore, I could not make an informed decision because the questions could not be asked at that time. So that was another reason as to why it was hard to vote on that.
Maybe you can add that to the minutes, just a sentence that.
That's a little odd to add, actually.
Well, I think it was mentioned at the meeting.
That
though,
was
that
mentioned at the
a reason.
meeting. I stated, and I thought it was I might be wrong, anyone else that was there, but the agreement was that we felt with the absence of Stan Kilpatrick and not being able to ask pertinent questions to the CIPs, that was our reason for not voting for it. That was actually
Thank you. Any other amendments to the minutes? Do we have a motion to, is there a motion? I don't think there's a motion on the floor. Motion on the floor to accept the minutes?
That's all of the
Sorry.
minutes. That's all of the minutes.
All the minutes. Sorry, we should have done that first. Powers, Representative Powers made a motion to accept the minutes. Is there a second? As amended, seconded by Representative Pasqualini. Is there any discussion on those minutes as amended? Sorry, it's late. Past my bedtime. Representative Rogers or Mello Miller, did you have? No? I saw some hands shooting up. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Thank you. So that passes 35 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. Would you like to put a motion on the floor?
I cannot.
Okay.
Oh, you can put the council's
Well, I could,
motion.
You can
but
put,
council's
you
motion.
can
I'm not
put
going
any,
to.
what?
I'm not going to.
You could put the council's on.
I don't think I have to.
Okay. then
Representative
moderator
Newsom?
Well, it wouldn't be coming from.
Madam Moderator, make a motion for $100,000.
Thank you. Representative Newsom has made a motion for 100,000. Is there a second? Representative Monahan has seconded that. Thank you. All right, we have a motion on the floor for $100,000, which is the for CIP 5L to refinish exterior glulam beams made by Representative Newsom and seconded by Representative Monahan. Thank you. Is there any discussion on that? Representative Whitney? Or actually, Representative Newsom, would you like to speak to your motion? Since you made it? No. Okay, Representative Whitney?
I'll say that I individually support the 100,000. I didn't want to make the motion because I'm standing up here as the head of the committee, chair of the committee, where we did not have a recommendation. But I'd like to ask the superintendent and Mr. Kilpatrick for further information about the plans to resurface the Glulam beams and the further maintenance schedule beyond that.
Since your meeting, I talked to Dr. Grenier, and I've been in contact with both one of the architects that is working on one of our school projects presently, because it was suggested, I think one of the suggestions that came out of the committee was that maybe it would be better to wrap these beams and be done with them. That architect that is working for us presently emphatically said that it shouldn't be done. And I've also contacted the manufacturer of the beams, which is in upstate New York. I'm waiting for a call back. He thought he would get back to me today on that, but he's going to give me further information regarding the treatment of the beams prior to their installation, and Rick Norris will be giving me the information regarding the treatment of the beams after they were installed. So once I get that information, I'll be able, and hopefully, I also asked him if there were any other recommendations with regard to alternative solutions to the problem, i.e. wrapping the beams, or maybe there's another material that we might use in order to do the beams. So that's where we stand with that at this moment.
Thank you. I had some questions. I was curious, was there missed maintenance on these beams over the lifetime?
Not that I'm aware of.
Was there, is there a warranty on them?
I would have to ask Rick Norris with regard to any warranties on the project.
Will we have to do this again in 10 years?
The information I've gotten on that from my maintenance coordinator has talked to a couple of contractors, local painting contractors, with regard to the materials that we would probably use on it, although we're still waiting further to see if there's something else. But the products that we have talked about so far, we're talking about 3 to 5 years in between. So less than the last time I was told 5 to 7 years. These contractors we've been talking to locally are saying 3 to 5 years.
Why did the architect you spoke to suggest not wrapping it? What was the problem?
Well, actually, the representative at the manufacturer also stated the same thing. And their reasoning was because you wouldn't know what was happening to the beams under the wrap.
And they're structural?
Yes.
Have you contacted Mystic Seaport? Because their new building seems to be entirely comprised of those types of...
That's one of the contractors that my coordinator actually spoke to, was the contractor that's working on those beams presently.
So was it known that there was a 10-year life on these beams going in, or that there would have to be such large maintenance?
I don't have an answer to that. I assume that everybody knew that there was maintenance to be done on this, but I don't know what...
It's a little troubling because it's the same person who's in charge of this new construction, so hard to know, what things may be overlooked in this new phase.
There was a town committee that was formed, the permanent school building committee that made the final determinations on this. It wasn't just one person, so... I think we'd have to probably talk to them and see what they knew at the time, but at any rate, this is where we are now, so we need to do something about it, and I'd be willing to talk to the gentleman, Mr. Bailey. He had some other ideas. I don't know if it was wrapping or if you had something else, but if there were other ideas that you had, I'd certainly look into those too in the meantime.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. With all due respect, I feel like we still are at the same point as we were in the committee meeting. We're still waiting on answers to come back, which is fair. I mean, you did your work, and you're waiting to find out from these different agencies. So with that, I'd like to move another number. I'd like to move 0. I think we should support this. I think it needs to be fixed, but I think we need to do our homework prior to the budget and have these answers on the table so that we can adequately prepare these. I think that there still should be time or a way that we can come back to this. I would hope to do something about this, but at this time I would like to not support this at zero. I think we had the opportunity, we knew this was coming down the pipe, and you knew it was going to be one of the recommended from the town manager as a CIP that was going to be pushed forward, and I don't feel like we're educated enough and prepared to vote on a number.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Representative Bordelon for 0. And it's been seconded by Representative Streeter. I think I did hear first, thank you. Sorry. Representative Merritt, I heard you, saw your hand.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm starting to get the idea that these are load-bearing beams.
They are.
And why wasn't steel proposed in place of them?
Good question.
I don't have an answer to that.
I really think that ought to be looked into hard and fast. This is really redundant. I understand a good portion of the front of that school is all wood.
It's both schools, both Kolnaski and Northeast.
It's not the way to go.
Thank you. Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Excuse me. Question about procedure. Instead of voting for 0, can we just, it sounds like he should be getting more information soon. Is there a way to delay?
We have a motion on the floor. You can vote for this, or you could vote for the other one. That's the options.
I understand. Well, on that case, I would like to ask a few questions. How long is this school going to remain open, estimates currently?
It's new. It's just opened.
Some of our schools now are 70 years old.
Right, so we're looking at $100,000 every 10 years for a long time. That seems to make the...
I think that would increase over time, too.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Representative Mello Miller?
So one thing that hasn't been brought up is it says applications will be submitted for competitive state grants. What have state grants been submitted yet, and what state grants can be applied for this?
We talked to the Department of Construction for the state of Connecticut and see if there are any grants available for this.
So you don't know if there are any grants available? I'm just trying to make sure I heard you right.
We're not positive that we would be able to get those grants.
Do you know which grants are available, though? Like,
I know which department to talk to, but no, we have not submitted any applications for grants.
Okay, can I ask, do you know, when was the CIP written? How much time has this had to find these answers? Because we have a lot more answers, it seems like, more than anything else tonight, or questions, and there's no real answers for us regarding any of this, whether, how many, what grants, or... So bottom line, what happens if we don't vote on this tonight? What happens?
The CIPs were put together in October.
In October, so it's been since October and we're in May. So what happens, because I think several of us have children at Northeast Academy right now and Kolnaski. What happens if we do not fix these beams? I mean, honestly, what happens?
As Representative Merritt said, when you go to the school, you know that these are structural supports. There's a little bit of a trellis that sticks out, but the work that we're talking about are the structural beams that hold up the roof. So I would imagine, Sam knows a lot more about construction than I, but if either it wasn't treated or it was wrapped in aluminum or something and it began to rot from the inside, it would have catastrophic consequences for the building.
Remind me again, when was this supposed to be repaired? How many years?
Well, this is the first time it's on a CIP.
I understand, but so how long are these beams supposed to last? You said up to 7 years? I heard 7 years earlier. Was that it? The treatment is supposed to last up to 7 years. So we're 3 years past due of a treatment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So why have we not applied this treatment before, like this year, last year? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to give you guys a hard time.
Yeah.
I'm honestly just curious why we can't apply that treatment.
I think the honest answer is it came to our attention. I think some of the maintenance folks said you better take care of that. I might add that Northeast Academy seems to be in worse shape for some reason, at least to my eyes. I went to both sites, of course. Catherine Konowski's it appears to be in better condition, but the maintenance folks pointed it out to us in the summer, and we put it on the CIP list.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Is there any evaluation that you've done to like just fix the problem? I think Representative Merritt said the best thing to do is to probably replace the whole thing and put steel there where we can actually, I've not seen the building and I haven't seen the problem, but I do know that Glulam beams have some type of warranty to them. I know that for a fact, and you know, we use them building decks and facades and all kinds of different things. And they're pretty sturdy beam. I mean, they're the state-of-the-art stuff. Whatever failures occurred, have we looked into, you know, consumer protection people at the state level? Have we seen, is it failing in other buildings that they've used? I mean, I think what everybody's trying to say here is that there is a lack of information, not on your part, but maybe on the production end of it, okay? And without that information, it's really hard for us to approve what you're asking for. And, you know, I can't support a number to say, oh, we're going to add another number here 3 years from now, because it just doesn't make sense to continue to do that. So maybe we turn around and figure that out before we come again before the body. Thank you.
Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a question that either the superintendent or Mr. Kilpatrick could answer. Is has it been determined that any irreversible damage has been presented from the past? Like, for instance, if it wasn't taken care of within a periodicity, once wood does what it does outside, there's really no way to put it back the way it was.
No, we've looked at the beams, and it's time to refinish the finish that was applied to the beams themselves. And again, as the manufacturer has told me, he's going to let me know exactly what was done at the factory prior to them being delivered here. So we'll know better then once I get that info.
All right, hey, thank you. And if the amount of zeros is voted upon, it wouldn't, would it affect the bidding process to check through this? Would that hold up another contractor to provide the work than the previous one in the past?
Well, from my perspective, we're going to talk to the manufacturer. We're going to get as much information as we possibly can. But I'm not sure what the RTM schedule is, but we certainly want to share that information so you can make an informed decision.
Okay, and for a zero number, that wouldn't hold up the process if zero was voted, if it went through tonight as a zero.
Well, we couldn't bid it because we wouldn't have any money.
All right, thank you very much.
Representative Streeter?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. In the CIP description, the task of refinishing and the equipment needed, what is the equipment that's needed?
These beams are about 30, 35 feet in the air, so you talk about lifts and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I think the process would take power washing, sanding, and then refinishing.
And you've contacted the original contract. I have a problem with it from the beginning, because in all these school projects, we have a large percentage that goes to engineering. We're paying for engineering. Why do we have a problem if we had the engineering? We should have known about this when we built it. That's one. Number two, I see it, we're back to the manufacturer to try to determine what do we do, how did you do it, what's the best procedure? How did we come up with a figure of $100,000? Did we pull it out of the air?
No, my maintenance coordinator actually talked to local contractors, and they came out and looked at it and gave us the estimates. They're just estimates.
But we didn't talk to the manufacturer. But now we are, because we don't know exactly what needs to be done. That's just a comment.
Well, we know they need to be finished. They need to be refinished. No, well, please God, no.
They're going to be replaced.
Not to be, they're not in such terrible disrepair. It's a, I don't know a huge amount about this, but it is a piece of wood that is exposed to the outside air. It needs to be, my word would be varnished, but I'm not sure it's not. I'm sure it's not varnished, but it needs to be the surface needs to be refinished. We're not talking about.
I understand that. So we need to refinish it, and if the manufacturer, oh, you just refinish it. So now, 5 years from now, and as prices go up, we need 150,000.
Right.
And then 5 years from then, we need 200,000. So we're just constantly feeding this animal of the structure. And maybe it is time to look at, do we replace it, or can we replace it?
Or is there an alternate?
Yes.
Maybe we could resurface it, and after a shorter period of time, encase it in something, and that would be the end of it. That's what we're going to find out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Monahan?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just because there's been some discussion about being structural. We're talking about not a structural failure. We're talking about refinishing something that is a structural beam.
That's
so
correct.
Obviously, if there was imminent failure, you'd close the school, right?
Certainly.
So that's not what we're talking about.
No.
So I'm in favor, maybe you've already done it, but I'm in favor of you referring this to your risk manager lawyer types to say what Mr. Streeter said. You get architects, you get engineers. Why did we do this if this is, But in terms of, if it seems to me that we need to work on this. We need to fix it. Right. Because if you don't refinish it, then there's the possibility it will end up in a structural failure, correct?
Correct.
Representative Gustafson?
Thank you. I agree that the design is poor, and it's kind of absurd that we'd have to spend $100,000 every 7 years or so. But that being said, that's what we're stuck with. It's all water under the bridge. It's sooner or later it has to get fixed. So if we say we passed and approved $100,000 now, could you hold that until you got some more? It's in my opinion, it's better to have the money available to get it fixed when you finally get it an estimate as to say, oh, we can't fix it now because the money's approved. And bottom line, the longer you put it off, the worse it's going to get. And then you run into safety concerns with the students. I wouldn't want to have that in my conscience to have something happen like that. So I'm of the opinion that we should probably approve the $100,000 because either way it's got to get fixed because it's going to cost more in the long run. And then after that, hopefully we could find some better way, maybe put some kind of, I don't know, shield over the top or something. I don't know. Thanks.
Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a couple things. I guess the first thing is, when do we think we'll get the information from the original equipment manufacturer?
I was hoping to get it today, so I expect it any day.
And whatever we do, and you talked about going out to different contractors, we should make sure that it's in compliance with what the OEM recommends, right?
That's correct.
I mean, we don't want to go off and come up with some other process other than exactly what the manufacturer of that equipment says has to be done, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Madam Moderator, is there any reason why we cannot postpone this vote to maybe the last scheduled RTM meeting and take it up?
We can make a motion to postpone. We could also vote on it and make a motion to reconsider when the new information comes forward.
I would prefer to postpone it, so I would like to make a motion to postpone this vote.
It has to be postponed to a specific
until
date.
the last scheduled RTM meeting that we have right now.
The 16th, thank you.
Thank you.
Could say that we have a schedule that goes out to the 25th.
The 16th, I don't think anyone,
I anticipate this will be a very quick vote, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
anticipate this will be a very quick vote, but I think we would feel better about voting if we had some more information.
So there's a motion on the floor to postpone this to,
Isn't that what I asked?
yeah,
Okay, all right. I thought I asked that.
sorry. There's a motion on the floor. There's a motion on the floor to postpone this to the 16th of May, and it's made by Representative Newsom, and it's been seconded by Representative Mello Miller.
Whatever.
What? No?
Fine.
What did you have?
Fine.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess the question is, obviously it needs to be fixed, it needs to be coded, but making sure that if we're going to spend $100,000 every 5 years, that if there's a $200,000 fix, that's going to give us more time. It's better to spend more money, is what my thought was.
I believe this is not debatable, actually, so.
So so I'd be in support of postponing it if we could have.
I don't think we can talk about it at this point. I think we have to come to a vote.
Is that what you're saying to me? Okay.
Call for a vote.
Yes. It's not debatable, right? Sorry about that. All in favor of postponing this, please raise your hand. All opposed?
We have 35, yeah?
12.
35, 1, 2, 3.
So that passes.
34
30.
yes, and Eben and
Wells. So that passes 33 and 32 in favor, 2 opposed. Any abstentions?
35 here.
Oh, sorry,
That's
35.
okay. 33 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions.
33 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions.
We'll see you soon.
There's a motion to recess. Representative Bordelon had her hand up first.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I had a quick question. Sorry, guys. The manager did not put in the $110,000 to cap the field. Would that take 2/3 vote? Could we possibly move that?
You want to rescind it?
I want to basically put back in. Is that possible, or it has to be done by the manager?
No.
You can't touch that.
The town council actually had put it in and it was voted against it. We can't really go against the managers. The town council can, but we can't go above the manager's
So we can't go.
number.
We can't get too.
Point of
Okay.
information.
Thank you.
When that was discussed at the town council meeting, the Director of Public Works said that he did not have the staff to go and do that work next year. So even if we vote for the money, they can't do the work. So there's really no sense in voting for that 110.
I heard a motion to recess from Representative Monahan, and it was seconded by Representative Pasqualini. All in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously, 35, 36.